Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Slinsky, aka the Running Wine Mom. Today, we have a fantastic guest joining us. She's a registered dietitian, nutritionist, prenatal and postnatal exercise specialist, and a certified fitness professional. With a passion for building a balanced and integrative approach to health, she combines tailored nutrition and fitness elements to provide personalized plans for her clients. Joining us today, Anita Mirchandani, who holds a BA in Spanish and Latin American Studies and an MS in Clinical Nutrition, both from New York University. Anita's unique background in exercise science, coupled with her personal training cert, allows her to offer holistic wellness solutions. Beyond her professional endeavors, Anita is a mom of two boys, an adventurer, and a lover of cooking, baking, and of course, wine in some moderation. Today, we'll be diving into various aspects of nutrition, fitness, and wellness. So grab your favorite drink, sit back, and join us. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited. We have so much to talk about today. So normally in my podcast, we do family and fitness first, but we have way too much to talk about today. So we're just going to start off with the wine and win of the week, and then we'll get into the meat of the podcast. So what is your WINE wine of the week?
It's a Sancerre. I know it's winter still, but I feel like I have transitioned to just loving white wines. And the Sancerre pairs with everything. And I don't feel so bad after if I have, a glass or two above moderation. So it works well.
Awesome. And what is your WHINE of the week?
Well, we're in February. It's the second week. I think the groundhog didn't see a shadow, but it's freezing. So I'm feeling like there's a low motivation factor here. So trying real hard to just rally and rise above and plan ahead for like the warmer months, like just keep myself on track.
I know. And I feel as though like this past weekend, I was like, I don't know what's happening with me, but I just feel so down but it's just the darkness and the no sun. It's been raining and it's cold and it's just, I've been like popping vitamin D supplements. Like,
Yeah, we've had no sun here too. It's depressing.
So what is your win of the week?
My win of the week is that I had probably 3 goals for myself. Like I wanted to be able to connect with 3 different people, and I sent those outreach emails last week and I got responses from all of them by this morning. It doesn't have to be like positive, but at least I got a response. And so I feel like it's good. Like I'm, putting myself out there and there's some communication that's coming back.
Yeah, putting yourself out there is definitely something that like I always talk about in regards to my podcast too, where like reaching out to guests or people or guests reaching out to me. People are always like, well, how do you get guests or how do guests come on? And I'm like, you literally just have to network. But I just think reaching out, there's no harm in reaching out to people. I think it's a great thing and it gives you confidence to keep reaching out to more people.
And virtually they can't see you, so it works out well.
Yeah, I know. It's like if they say no, that's fine.
Good.
Yeah, it's all good. All right. So as I mentioned, we have so much to talk about today, and we're going to get right into it. So I want to talk about first, we're going to start off with building kind of a balanced approach to nutrition, health, and wellness. You have kind of mentioned that your focus is building a balanced and integrative approach to health by combining tailored nutrition and fitness elements. This is the perfect combo for people that they need. How about, could you elaborate for the listeners on how this approach contributes to overall well-being and how you personalize your plans for your clients?
Yep, definitely. So, I would like to start off by saying that every person is different and every lifestyle is different and schedule and logistics, right? So I like to sort of take apart what people's, major commitment is for the day and kind of find pockets that would work to slip in some of these healthy, like optimal practices. When it comes to balancing fitness and nutrition, the first things first, I prioritize food because without fuel, you can't function. I go through the day and basically talk about the key meals and how to make each meal give you that sustenance you need. And I work on the circadian rhythm. So the way that it works is like when you wake up, your body wakes up when it, maybe with an alarm clock or when your child comes in your room, but it's really been awake due to its own holistic self, maybe a couple hours earlier, kind of following the sunrise, sunset method. And so I like to educate people on that because I guess everyone just forgets, like they wake up and they're like, I need coffee. I'm like, actually, your body can, it's functioning just fine. You can push coffee to like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. Maybe hydrate a little bit, get yourself going. There's like 3 or 4 other things, believe it or not, that you could do in the morning to optimize your body's energy levels, and then get into the coffee, because that'll give you that sustenance till, past 3 o'clock, where you feel that sugar dump and you need to
Hmm.
have extra pick me up usually. And that's when a lot of people have their second cup of coffee. And that's when I'm like, nope, you got to cap your caffeine, by like noonish. I pretty much say between 12 and 12:30, you stop your caffeine intake. So, it's really working on that rhythm, and then kind of explaining to people that if you're not eating throughout the day and then you end up eating a big dinner, number one, you're going to feel very lethargic, like as you get an approach to that dinner time. And number two, you're going to eat such a big meal, you're going to feel really uncomfortable. A lot of times people are like, I have starving, I eat, and then I just feel like, bloated or uncomfortable or, just heavy. And then I just want to like lay down. And it's like, actually your dinner should be your lightest meal, because your body's already kind of setting in its sleep mode. Your body's already kind of releasing its melatonin and kind of going into that rhythm of, okay, I'm going to start relaxing now. And you can kind of stop doing any kind of activity that's going to inhibit my relaxation process, which is why I'm sure you've heard the word strain. And if you are pushing yourself past that normal circadian rhythms, cycle, you are adding strain to your body. You're adding strain to your organs. You are adding strain to your routine, and you're adding stress. So it's actually counterintuitive, counteractive to the process that you're trying to build. So I
Yeah,
kind of
that's
have to go through that sort of education first, and then people sort of like, oh, and then it's
yeah.
like small tips and tricks that we work through for every part of it.
So what do you think the best thing that someone should do in the morning instead of coffee if they're stuck on that?
First of all, don't get me wrong, I love my coffee. It is
Yeah.
when I wake up in the morning, I'm literally like, how long until I have that cup? So it's there. But usually what I typically do is, obviously there's the morning routine just to get ready. But then I pretty much force myself to hydrate. I'm like, just drink that
Hmm.
water, because you need it. Because my mouth feels parched a lot of times, especially in the winter with the dryness of the air.
Hmm.
Sometimes you might have a mister or humidifier, but it's just dry. You feel dry. So hydrate immediately. Hydrate if you can. Do a little bit of lemon water, like anywhere between 8 and 12 ounces. I highly recommend it. I usually just squeeze lemon I'll squeeze a bunch of lemon in a cup and leave it in the fridge for like 2 days, and then just pour my, tablespoon worthy and just mix it into water.
Ooh, yeah.
Um, and then I drink it on my way to dropping my kids off to school. So it's like it's like a treat to myself when I come home and I get to have my um, I also recommend, if you can and you have the ability to, face a window with sunlight. If you have a terrace, if you have a patio, if you have, any access to just getting some sunlight and just like breathing, even opening a window, breathing the fresh air, that sort of just wakes you up and kind of gives you a little bit of mojo. Um, I don't typically have time to journal, but I do have clients. I do try to tell people, like, maybe just write down 3 things you want to get done today. Just write it down. This way you have it, it's out there, and you've kind of sort of gotten yourself, like, because a lot of people, you wake up, you feel a little frazzled, and you hear a kid calling your name, you got to get things ready. And so this kind of like slows down the momentum a little bit. And then, yeah, I pretty much would say that if you're following a process, and, I'm sure most of the listeners are in the same world that we're in with families and children, that by 9ish, it's kind of like, okay, everyone's out of the house if it's a good day, and you can start your coffee. And the reason I also say that is because when you think about circadian rhythm, you want to give yourself at least 12 hours, if not 14 hours, between your last meal the night before and your first meal the next morning. And while this could be considered a form of intermittent fasting, I call it circadian rhythm fasting, because it's really more intuitive. It's not necessarily like, you have to be so structured and so strict on 16 hours. It's more of like, when did I stop eating? Okay, how long can I give my body to really hydrate and digest and burn, fat as the fuel, and then kind of get that mojo going? A lot of times I even optimize people's schedules and say, if you get that workout in before your first meal, you're using the fat as fuel, and it's, just going to optimize your caloric burn.
Yeah, and that's something I feel like a lot of people are torn on if you should eat before your workout or you shouldn't eat before your workout. Because I'm kind of like a fasted workout person. But then Saturday, I like must have had too much time in between because I was like a super hard workout. I didn't eat before. I was like seeing stars on Saturday, and I'm like, but I'm just not hungry before I work out a lot of
Right.
times. It's not like I'm like not eating on purpose. It's just that's how I think my body works.
I do have a handful of clients that just physically can't have food in their stomach,
Yeah.
even if they're doing something low impact. Like, and I think it's also the time of day. Like, if you've already pushed your workout and it's past 9:30, and you're used to eating something around 9, my suggestion would be then have your fuel, like have a
Hmm.
little bit of something, and then when you come back, then maximize your intake at that point. It'll be like a breakfast brunch vibe, and then you can kind of restructure the rest of your meals to fit into the rhythm of your time, that
Right.
you're physically awake. But it doesn't have to be so strict. That's the thing. It's more of like a flow, but the guidance is that you try your best to get that fasted workout, and if it fits your schedule, to maximize your momentum.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good advice. So after your clients have gotten their nutrition advice, you have a background in exercise science and personal training, sir. How do you kind of seamlessly combine the fitness program and nutrition support?
So whenever I talk, once we kind of get through sort of like the nutrition priorities, I talk about it all depends for me on the client. And it's a couple of things. Number one, have they had what's their typical go-to of working out? Number two, have they had injuries, and if they've recovered from the injuries,
Hmm.
what are their susceptibilities? Like for example, my husband has had, almost three full knee surgeries. So
Wow.
there's like obviously things I'd be like, well, I wouldn't recommend you going cycling. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's more of like understanding their fitness history, and then talking through where they are in life today. So, for example, what I would probably say for a female who's had maybe 2 to 3 kids, one kid even in their 40s, not hitting perimenopause yet, but like kind of like mom life, juggling work, some juggling life, I might say, listen, you probably already have a natural level of stress in your
Hmm.
body. So maybe, higher intensity workouts may not be beneficial for you. Maybe we got to slow it down to something called low intensity steady state. So that's like maximizing your fat burn without increasing your cortisol levels, that counterintuitively adds stress to the body.
Hmm.
So, it depends on that. But then, I've got a guy who's got maybe low energy when he wakes up because he's been working late nights and he needs an endorphin rush and a little bit of mojo, so to speak. Then I might say, hey, buddy, let's get you a 30-minute a low impact, but let's get you cardio. Let's get you maybe like a Peloton cycling, or let's get
Hmm.
you into the gym and do like 30 minutes of total body strength training. And I might write down, what day to do what. And I can give like a full breakdown of like a leg day, an arm day, a total body day. I mean, and every workout that I would design also is always focused on the core and or has dynamic stretching before and after. I pretty much write down in all the routines, at least 10 minutes of foam rolling every day and really stretching, and some sort of like rejuvenation sort of therapeutic treatment. So whether it's like rubbing some CBD cream on what I feel might be achy areas after certain workouts, or eucalyptus, or soaking in Epsom salt, things like that. I usually will guide them so that the workout and the recovery is sort of, that momentum is still there.
Yeah. And I never really thought about the fact that, especially as parents, we're so stressed already. And then to add in a stressful workout, like, I don't know why. I feel like that's like an aha moment for me. I have been really liking the more low impact workouts recently, but I'm like, that's not who I normally am. But it makes sense if that's kind of what your body is needing.
Meeting. Yeah. So it's funny. I was in New York City in the era of the boutique fitness boom, and in
Hmm.
the era of when those obstacle challenge courses were becoming popular, like the Tough
Hmm.
Mudders and the
Hmm.
Spartan races. And I remember doing a couple of them with a group of like with the gym that I was part of. And it was like, super high intensity, and I was wiped, and I would check my heart rate on my like a Garmin Fit tracker, and I'd be like, oh, I burned like, 760 calories. And it was like, yeah. And flash forward to like even 2 years ago doing that, I am wiped and I don't even have the energy
Hmm.
to like sustain the rest of the day. So I was like, something's got to change here. And if I want to achieve the same results but still feel like motivated and energized to do everything else that I need to do so that I'm not like sitting horizontal at like 8:30.
Hmm.
And I got to like revamp some of that. So that's when like I started like doing a little research and trying to figure out what is it that physiologically happens to us. And it's more of the consistency. We have to lift weights and or have some strength, whether it's body weight or with resistance, um, to maintain muscle definition. And we need the cardiac to keep the blood flow and the output going. So for heart health. So they're both equally as important, but neither one of them has to be high intensity.
That's great advice. And so to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, maybe we can talk about some wellness hacks for busy parents because getting in workouts while you are a parent, I know so many people struggle with that and can't find balance. What are some practical wellness hacks that maybe you recommend to clients, especially those who are really juggling multiple responsibilities?
Absolutely. So when it comes to the nutrition side, I feel like a lot of people struggle with getting a meal put together for their kids and themselves and their significant other.
Hmm.
So a lot of times I might map out like what are like we do it by macro. So we're like what are the 2 or 3 proteins that your family might eat and what are the, handful of vegetables that you could introduce or that your children will be accepting of. And what are the starches you pretty much could always have on hand. And I kind of map out their schedule for them to first figure out what those are and when could they prepare those things. So for me, the 2 biggest hacks I do are I will do groceries pretty much, and I will have it arrive, if not Sunday, because maybe Sunday is a very hectic day. Monday. So Monday morning, the groceries arrive, and if I don't go to the store, sometimes I go to Trader Joe's first thing Monday morning if it's like a
Hmm.
hustle. But sometimes I get like a delivery service, and that I've like a membership that I've had. So it all depends. But if I get the groceries in, I usually will say prioritize your proteins and have them mapped out. So pick 3 recipes that you want for the week, and let's go ahead and prepare them. In the sense we prep them. So if it's chicken thighs in, like a cilantro lime get that stuff, the seasoning and everything ready. So the other thing is I also can educate them to make some of these marinades and seasonings ahead of time. So
Hmm.
basically what I'm trying to say is not everything happens at that moment. So their groceries come in, they've already got their seasonings ready, they're throwing everything into a bag and they're putting it in the freezer unless they're going to cook it that day. So this way, like, 3 days a week, they have something ready to thaw and bake maybe while their child is eating, or maybe they have a child care at home that can help prep some of the food, or maybe they're working from home and they can put stuff in while they're on a call, however they can balance that momentum. And so that's one thing. And the other thing I always usually say is make vegetables and or a starch for like minimum 3 days and a handful.
Hmm.
So usually it's like a big pot of rice or a big thing of pasta or a big thing of sauteed potatoes. And then for vegetables, I always just do like I always just give like a recipe that I love. It's just like a sheet pan
Hmm.
vegetables. So it's like 2 to 3 vegetables, easy to roast or easy to bake, drizzle some, sea salt. And I usually do ghee butter, like ghee butter spray,
Hmm.
anti-inflammatory, and I like it better. And I mean, there's all this movement, also conversations on seed oils and things like that. So I love the ghee spray it on, or sometimes if I want it a little nuttier texture, I'll just drizzle chunks, like 2 or 3 globs of coconut oil because it just melts on its own. Um,
Yeah.
and then I'll add the seasoning after because I'll just mix it all together.
Mm.
And I do love this company. They're called Flavor God. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Mm-mm.
It's this guy. He's like, I would say either he's a chef or he's just a guy who likes to be a chef kind of vibe,
Hmm.
but he makes his own seasonings and he sells them. It's
Mm.
direct to consumer, and it's basically your way of not having to add extra salt. So he launched
Ooh.
products in the era of like, be cognizant of how much sodium you're putting into your food to make it taste good. And he has like a no salt mix. He has an everything seasoning mix, and not
Ooh.
like an everything. So it's
Yeah.
got onion and the garlic and the pepper and he has a garlic lovers. He has a pizza lovers.
Mm.
So I love it. So I buy a bunch of his seasonings and I mix match based on I'll advise based on like people's taste buds or desired meals, kind of like, okay, your child will eat Mexican, so let's do like this. If your child will eat
Okay.
this, and I try to really maximize the parent and child like kind of adaptability because nobody wants to be in a kitchen standing for more than 30 minutes. Like
No, it's
so
not
it's
feasible.
it's yeah, and like if somebody's busy and doesn't have time to prep, I'll be like, let's get you a rotisserie chicken.
Hmm.
Let's get you like some prepared food from like I more often opt to one of those prepared food sections at like a Whole Foods or like a boutique, like type of store in town, because I think it has more to offer than like ordering straight from like a restaurant, because A,
Hmm.
you're paying all
A
these
lot.
service fees and delivery fees for nothing. Um, and B, you can at least see the food and visually like take your child on the way home from like pickup and just grab a few things, and you know
Right.
it's an image. So that's typically what like. I kind of just break down like the daunting anxiety of like, how do I put a meal together, and sort of just like start with the macro breakdown and then kind of work through advising each process.
That's great advice. So that's something that I've tried to implement this year. Is just literally making protein, making vegetables, making carb or starch for the week, and then just figure out how to make it with that because it's so much easier to just come home and it's already made, and then you can add sauce or whatever, like you're just saying. And it's so much easier when you don't have the mental, like, you just
Bandwidth.
don't want to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and if you can't, let's say you come home and your husband might be like, "Oh, honey, you know what should we order today? Like, let's celebrate." Or
right,
if you haven't thawed it and it's in your freezer, it's not going to waste.
right.
If you thawed and you cooked it, you can use it for leftovers for lunch
Hmm.
tomorrow. The other thing is, I always tell people, like, if you can't get yourself on a protein that's like, you can't get yourself a chicken or a fish or a lean meat, what about eggs? Eggs are like the best underrated protein that you can throw in. You can literally eat 6 eggs a day. Like there was all these like, studies about like, eggs and cholesterol, and like I had to debunk some of it with some of my clients, because I'm like, eating eggs doesn't
It's
cause high cholesterol.
right.
So if you like eggs and you like eggs in various forms, you could do an omelet with vegetables for lunch, and you can do scrambled egg burrito like tacos or burritos for dinner. I mean, you could do anything really.
Yeah, that's so smart. That's great. Perfect advice. So now we talked again about the nutrition. What are some simple and effective ways that you can incorporate fitness into your daily routines without feeling like overwhelmed? Especially, I mean, if you have a gym, it's nice. We are very lucky to have a gym with childcare, and I'm like, that's really one
Oh,
of the main reasons I'm surviving parenthood. But I know a lot of people just don't. So what advice would you have for that?
I think that if you're living in a like an urban area, like in a city, I think
Mhm.
that inevitably, if you can find yourself getting like five, and it's as little as 5 to 10 minutes. I always tell people, I'm like, I don't need you to stress out about going and get something for 45 minutes. Like,
Mhm.
that seems unreasonable. 30 minutes every day is my goal of some kind of movement. So you might have a 5 to 10 minute commute in the morning, that counts, and a 5 to 10 minute commute home, that
Mhm.
counts. You might be home, and maybe while after your kids go to bed, you might just like put on something and stretch it out. That's like 5 or 10 minutes right there. It doesn't have to be like sweating crazy like workouts. It could just be like, increasing that blood flow and getting that, sort of like decompressing kind of scenario. If you're living in a house, a lot of times I'm like, go take the stairs a couple of times. It's the invisible housework that I think that people forget. Like, take your like go instead, if you don't want to work, you don't have time to work out, but you have a lot of stuff to do. Make it a workout. Like, clean your kid's bathroom, clean your bathroom, grab the laundry baskets, maybe do an extra loop around the house, or maybe you're doing some squats in between the dishes, like little things like that. Like, I mean, they add up, like, and you're on
Right.
your feet, so you're going to
Yeah.
feel tired by the end of the day.
Yeah.
And especially with a house, it's a lot to manage. So I think that, it's understanding, like, if you're in a suburb, or if, because a lot of times people are like, well, I live in a suburb and I'm in a car a lot. And I'm like, yes, but actually, you can use your house to your advantage. One floor, two floors, whatever. I also am just like, sometimes I'm just like, I will write like a 10-minute routine. I'm like, if you have a yoga mat, I'm just going to give you 10 minutes, 1 minute each, 45 seconds on, 15 seconds off of exercises.
Right.
You will feel so good by the time you're
Hmm.
done. And many of them commit to it.
Yeah, and it's like body weight. You don't need weights for everything. I think sometimes people just overthink it. They're like, I need to go here and need to do this, and it has to be 45 minutes. And it's like, if you're doing nothing and you add in 10 minutes, that's more than what you were doing.
And bonus, I even tell them, you don't have to change your clothes. You can do it
Right.
in your
Hmm.
pajamas. You might feel a little sweaty. You might have a little blood flow. You might feel a little energized. Great, whatever. But you don't have to do it. You don't have to change. Like, sometimes I even do this for myself. I will roll out of bed. I will foam roll, and I'll do my 10 minutes in my room without even a yoga mat on my carpet, because I'm like, to go upstairs
Yeah.
and forget it. Like I'm just going to do, because my gym's upstairs. And so I'm like, I don't want to do
Right.
that. I'll just do it in my own room and I'll feel awake. And
Yeah.
then it's
And
like,
it's a great way to start the day.
yes.
So another problem that I feel like a lot of parents that I talk to when you're busy, you're just like mindlessly eating. So what are some tips that you could have for mindfully eating, especially if you're busy and you have like if you're taking the kids here, you're taking the kids there, and you're just hungry and um, trying to like keep that for your overall being um, to your
I
schedule.
sort of I sort of tell people to put reminders in their phone for like it to pop up and be like lunch hour or
Okay.
snack one or hydration time, because a lot of times people do mindless snacking when they haven't hydrated enough because they think they might be hungry, but they're actually probably need to just drink a little bit of water, maybe walk around a little bit. It could also just be like sort of the mental slumpness that kind of triggers wanting to snack on something. It doesn't always necessarily um, convert to I actually feel better or I actually feel like, satisfied or satiated. So I'm like, all right, let's put these in your calendar. So, like if you're feeling something or you're feeling an itch or something, is it close to the time that you're supposed to eat? If it is, if it's within 20 to, anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, make that the meal time. If it's
Hmm.
not, hydrate a little, move a little, stretch a little, and see if that urge goes away. And if it doesn't, then I always arm them with snacks. So I'm usually like,
Right.
at some point between, if you have your breakfast somewhere around 9ish in the morning or 9:30, by the time you get to work, or if you're working at your desk or at home, you might need a snack around like 11. You might need lunch around 1:30. You might need another snack around 3:34, and then you might need dinner by like 6:30. I mean, that's the optimal sort of time frame. So if you're in
Hmm.
that range and if you're on the go and you haven't been able to achieve one of those things, it's inevitable that you're going to feel hungry by that next time reminder. So it's kind of what their routine is for at least 2 days. I usually suggest, and I'll create like mini meal ideas for them.
Oh, that's a
So
good
it's
idea.
easy to be on the go. For example, I'll do an English muffin with cheese and tomato, and I'll usually
Mm.
do like I'll suggest like a bruschetta spread, or
Mm.
if they want something heartier, I'll do hummus. Like I'll give them mix and match ideas, and it's really easy to pack and it's easy to eat while you're driving. It doesn't
Yeah.
distract. Um, I love, if people don't have big issues with cheese and dairy, I'm always saying like, grab a cheese stick, or sometimes I do like wraps. Like I'll do like a sprouted
Ooh.
wrap with nut butter, and I'll suggest like hemp seeds and or like blueberries or something easy where you can roll up and then just cut in half and just sort of, eat.
Ooh. That's yummy.
There's
I'm like now I'm like, oh, I have blueberries upstairs. I could do
Yeah,
that.
there's a brand called Angelic. It's Angelic Bakehouse, and they
Okay.
have a sprouted wrap that's just equivalent to a little bit over one serving size of starch. So
Oh,
you can
okay.
use the entire, because that's the other thing, right? Some of these things that we buy, like starches, are actually considerably more than 1 to 1.5 servings, or close to
Hmm.
2, sometimes even 3. So it's making sure that the portion that you're getting is also within the starch portion, because that's the macro you want to be the most strict about, because that's the one that directly impacts glucose, blood sugar levels, and
Yeah.
lipid levels. And so I try to like make sure that that is kind of also fills you up, but like is
Right.
within that limit.
So what about stress? We talked about nutrition, physical fitness, and then obviously parents have a lot of stress balancing work, family, and personal health. What advice would you have to manage the stress effectively?
I think the stress for a lot of parents and a lot of like, two household full-time working couples, I think it's inevitable to have that decompression time between like 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. I
Hmm.
think for some people who have children who don't sleep easily, it could be the trigger for the stress, because you're just like, go to sleep already,
Right.
or you're just feeling very like unsettled, and it sort of riles you up inside. You feel like just irritable.
Right.
And I think that it's very easy to be like, and then just like toss it up in the air and like go to the pantry and grab some popcorn or some chocolate covered almonds, or um I don't know, whatever floats your boat, bowl of cereal, you name it. So I think it's important to sort of recognize that actually, like, believe it or not, eating late doesn't positively affect how you sleep.
Okay.
And so I always talk about this because I always say, listen, the less quality sleep you have, the
Hmm.
more stressed your body is innately, which
Hmm.
means that when you're feeling additional stress, it's only going to escalate like the inflammation your body is
Right.
already feeling. And everyone, it manifests itself differently for every person. So once I kind of address there's a sleep relationship there and
Hmm.
how sometimes eating late and or drinking that glass of wine doesn't actually, it's kind of like when you see it on TV or you used to, when it was like the old school, like, "Oh, I can't wait to just have a glass of wine." It's actually not productive.
Hmm.
What is productive is a hot shower, washing your face and maybe getting, I have a friend who loves doing this. So after her kids go to sleep, she'll wash her face and she'll use one of those facial misters
Oh, yeah.
steamers, and she'll just sit there and she'll listen to like her favorite tunes. Usually it's like 90s hip hop. And she'll just do this on her face. And it's so funny because she'll send me videos of herself. She'll be like, I'm just zenning out. And it's like, but it's like her happy place. And I'm like,
Right.
she does that, she's relaxed. She'll check, she might get, check her phone, get in her pajamas, and she's like, she just decompresses that way. So
Right.
I always make my clients list down one or two other ways that they would ideally like to do to get their stress out
Right.
without affecting their sleep negatively. And then we kind of implement those strategies. And at the end of the day, if 10 chocolate covered almonds is the trick, I highly recommend it because I'm like, you can't be restrictive either,
Right.
because if you're restrictive, then that's going to impact your behavior the next day. It's just
Right.
going to, it's not going to, the satiety bud has to be satisfied. It has to feel content.
Yeah. And the running wine mom, I love wine. And like I was saying, from June to December, we've just been nonstop. So January, we pretty much did dry January. And I, I- you can feel a difference when you're not having that glass of wine at night. And I'm like, I hate to admit it because I love my wine, but I just said to my husband, like, he worked like the whole week. It was just a very stressful week. And I was like, I normally feel very differently after you're done this week. And
Right.
I don't. I'm like, oh my God, is that because I haven't been and I have had my wine here and there, but just not as much as normal. And I'm like,
Well, no, so the
definitely
other thing is, like, I don't want people to feel like they can't drink their wine during
right.
the week if they need a glass, but that's why, like, I'm like, let's take it back to the happy hours.
Yeah.
The happy hour is called a happy hour for a reason because it's that transition point between one phase of the day into the next phase of the day.
Hmm.
And it gets you through that hump to get that next phase. And in parenting, that next phase is dinner and bedtime. So if you've
Right.
had a drink between 5 and 6 and you're eating dinner with your kids, somewhere around the same time, and you're kind of wrapping up everything, because my biggest thing is like if you can get all food intake, alcohol intake, everything done by 7:30,
Hmm.
that's a win. It's a win
Yeah.
for your body. It's a win for your sleep cycles, and it's a win for your overall health. So if you can get that going, then it's a success. So I'm like, if you really need a glass of wine, no judgment, have it
Right.
at 5 o'clock. Like it's, number one, you're going to feel great because it's
Right.
just going to be right what you need. It's not going to make you feel tired or anything. It's just
Yeah.
like,
The
you want
relaxing.
to throw it in the air with your carrots and chicken tenders? You go right ahead. Like,
I
I
know.
don't care. It's like
Yeah.
that. It takes the edge off.
Hmm. I agree. Well, so there's a few different areas of nutrition that I want to kind of go a little bit deeper into, and I want to start a little bit with children's nutrition because I personally have two toddlers, and every day you never know what you're getting. Like yesterday, they had tons of strawberries and blueberries. They didn't have any cake at any of the parties that we went to yesterday, which was like just ironic, not like anything purposeful, but um, some days they're picky, some days they're not. So, what advice do you have for parents to kind of encourage a diverse and nutritious diet of children who maybe are pickier?
I think that pickiness comes from a few things: sensory, texture, smell, and general sort of introduction. So
Hmm.
when it comes to sensory and texture, a lot of kids might just look at something and think it's going to feel or taste a certain way, or I
Hmm.
may try something and don't like the way it feels in their mouth, and will sort of not, I would say, not develop an aversion, but just sort of resist it. When it's a smell, it's usually like, for example, I almost love cooking when my kids are not home because when they smell something, they're like, "What is that?" And I'm like, it's, I don't know, steak strips. And they're like, it smells like that. I'm like, yeah, that's what beef smells like when you cook it,
Yes.
but you don't smell it. You eat the end product.
Hmm.
So, I always like try to avoid, I mean, now they're older, so it's a little different, but like, and then of course the lack of introduction could just come from the fact that as a family, you might not eat something. Like,
Hmm.
you might not all eat meat, or you might not all eat fish. And so I think that it's important to separate the three facets of it. It's not necessarily falls into like an overarching picky eating, but it's just the way that food is sort of presented and how it's presented. So eating, like, just try it. If you don't
Right.
like it, you don't have to eat it. Just try it. And then mentally assuming and sort of accepting to yourself, okay, if he or she doesn't like this food, I'm okay with giving them A, B, C backup. For
Right.
example, my first son is 9 now, and he's, I would say he's moving into the world of foodie. Like, he loves,
Hmm.
he's really into flavor and all this stuff,
Mm.
and he's very curious. So he's trying everything and enjoying a lot of things. My younger one is like chicken tenders for life at this stage, right? And so, but he'll eat two vegetables, and he'll have a ton of fruit with it. But there are days where we'll go out and I'm like, just try it. And he'll eat six
Right.
bites. And I'm like, okay, you tried it, 6 bites. And the back of my mind, I'm like, well, when we go home, I'll give him, I bake a lot of like, um, sort of my own recipes of muffins. I'll do
Mm.
like an oat flour muffin with like hemp seeds and flax seeds, and I'll just make a bunch and leave it in the freezer for these types of things. So
Ooh,
I'm
that's
always like
smart.
thinking of backups, because I'm
Hmm.
like, it still counts as nutrition. It
Yeah.
doesn't, just because they're not eating like the balanced plate look doesn't mean they're not getting the fuel that they need.
Yeah.
And don't forget, if it's not directly impacting their sleep and or mood, they're generally they're doing fine. Like,
Okay.
the stress then goes on you because you're like, my child isn't that child that will eat the,
I
you
know.
know, the salad before the entree and only wants the bread or butter in the bread. And no, that's, it's on you. So in my mind, I'm like, if I give him a banana or a fruit, and I give him two of these muffins, and I'll give him a half cheese stick, that's a mini meal before bed,
Right.
good to go. I used to stress out. I used to like come up with a foil wrapped of XYZ. And I'm like, this is not worth it anymore. I don't want to
Right.
stress about this. I'll take him there. We'll see what they have. We'll try it, and we'll always have a backup, and it'll just be available.
Yeah, the backup is such a good like idea. 'Cause that's what I mean, we usually just kind of default to like fruit, but it's like we make dinner and then we give them dinner, and then when they don't want their dinner, I'm like, okay, would you guys like whatever fruit that I have? And I'm like, I don't
Fruit,
feel, yeah.
yogurt, that's
Hmm.
great. Cheese sticks are great. Like, listen, like even Trader Joe's, like sometimes some of they don't eat big portions. So like
Right.
the frozen stuff, like there's frozen like little things that they might, like kid friendly frozen stuff that you might see, even like 10 fries, like,
Yeah.
but that's potato, it's a starch, and it's a better starch than, enriched pasta sometimes. So like any of those things could also kind of be your backup, for
Yeah.
just being able to like pull it together.
So how about with family meal dynamics? Family meals are very crucial. How do you approach kind of creating a positive mealtime for everyone, especially, I mean, really for any age, because toddlers are like chaotic and they don't want to be there. Teenagers, they probably want to be on their phone. It's just a lot of, and I grew up, I mean, family meals were so important. Big family meals, small family meals. And we obviously want to instill it with our kids too.
I grew up the same way. My mom, so we're South Asian, and my
Mhm.
mom loved to cook. And
Mhm.
I mean, we ate home cooked food 4 nights a week. Friday nights
Mhm.
was our night to go out to dinner. And then inevitably Saturday night, it would be like a potluck dinner with family friends, but it was always home cooked food, and then back to home cooked food on Sunday. And
Mhm.
my mom was always like, everyone eats together. And she would plate our food, and, kind of in that era of like, got to finish your plate kind of vibe.
Mhm.
And I don't remember having much choice growing up. So like, but like, that's not how it works today. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, do you want cucumbers or red peppers? And would you prefer pasta with butter or pasta with sauce? And it's like, like a short order chef kind of vibe.
Yes, exactly.
But like, I think that the main thing is that like, I sort of like right around dinner, I'm like, guys, this is what we're having for dinner.
Right.
You can have it in your version, and you can have it in your version.
Mhm.
We're going to have it in our version. All of us can try each other's versions, but this is what's happening for dinner tonight. take it or leave it. And if you
Hmm.
don't eat it, you don't get your dessert, which is fine, no problem. And I'll still give you other food, but that's negotiation.
Right.
And usually, more often than not, my older son's like always like with it. He's like, oh yeah, I'll take it. And then like he'll, house it down and then enjoy his dessert too, upon, completion. My younger son will negotiate a little, but he will usually get through 60 to 70% of the meal and finagle his way into dessert. But like if I say it very like, I've made this,
Right.
whatever. But it's like you also have to figure out which family meals are going to be easy to rotate. For example,
Hmm.
there are three things that we always have that are easy to rotate. Number one, we do like pretty much two versions. I'll do like an almond flour, like a crusted chicken tender, like chicken nuggets
Ooh, yeah.
for me, like for
Hmm.
just because I try to limit my starch just because of my genetic stuff. And I'll like cut it and make it into like a salad, or I'll put marinara sauce and like melt some mozzarella cheese on it.
Ooh, yum.
The same chicken nuggets will go to my older son and he'll dip it with ketchup and he'll have a side of rice or starch, and then he'll have his like vegetables, or he likes like a side salad. The younger one will just have his version of chicken nuggets, which is like we'll just make it regular panko, and then he'll have like a vegetable and a fruit with it. So that's like one example we always have on hand. Like I usually make a batch and freeze it so it's ready to thaw. The other thing are like Mexican, like tacos. So cheese quesadilla, steak
Mm.
quesadilla, steak or chicken quesadilla or fajitas, some sort of like, peppers and onions for us, and then my son. And the younger one usually gets like, he's liking guacamole now. So we'll make a guacamole and he'll have some avocado, that'll be his like dipping into with the quesadilla. So like, it's kind of like figuring out what are 2 to 3 cuisines our family will eat without hassle,
Right.
and and repeat it. Like
Yeah.
if it's not broke, you don't have to fix it. Like if it's there's no judgment on eating quesadillas 5 days a week. If it
Right.
works, it works. It's wholesome, it is nourishing, and it satisfies your children's, taste buds. So why not?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so helpful for, I mean, with kids of all ages, I feel like that's advice that you can take through. Go
Wait,
ahead.
I just want to say one thing. I do want to say, like, my biggest thing in all of this is like you don't have to be judging yourself to be so creative,
Right.
or try to do something so, like you follow people on Instagram, you follow people, you see what everyone makes, and that's not to say that like if you even did 10% of that, it would be more than enough. Like
Right.
everyone's always like trying to strive to make like the best looking, tastiest. It doesn't exist.
Right.
If it's tasty and it's delicious, it's likely not that healthy. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So like, and then you got to eat a portion of it. So like, you just have to take that pressure off. And if it's not in your repertoire of how you function, you just got to take that pressure off and go back to the basics.
Yeah, and that's such a good advice too, because I feel as though, like, for me, if I do make something like really nice, of course I'm gonna post it to Instagram so everyone can see, but like that's maybe like once a week that I'm posting that. And then, every other night is the basic protein,
Yeah,
vegetable starch. And it's like, but if everybody's doing that and you're going through and all different people are posting at different, times, and you're like, oh my God, they're having this like beautiful meal. And then the next day, oh, they're having this beautiful meal, but I'm having this. But it's when you kind of look at it, it's like, well, maybe they're only doing it once a week too. So there's no,
absolutely.
they're not doing it every night. Which is something I think that people kind of, they don't always remember that.
No, and that's why like I also go back to reminding people like if you've made the effort and you're making something, double the recipe and freeze half of it, because like
Right.
you put the effort in. Like if it's like I do, like for example meatballs, I will
Mhm.
make a big sheet pan of meatballs. I'll double the recipe. I'll make 50 meatballs. I'll
Yeah.
freeze, a good 30 of them, and it's around. Like it's easy because it's easy to thaw a couple and make a meatball sub for my older son for lunch on a weekend. It's
Right.
easy to throw on top of pasta for me or my husband. It's
Hmm.
easy to give, to my little one with a side of veggies. Like it's just backup. So
Yeah.
it's like creating that safe space of backups too is also part of the process that I try to advise on.
That's great. So for the next part, I kind of want to go into like pregnancy to menopause, and then also through like different cycles and specifically pregnancy. So kind of all the things that the moms are not sure how to navigate. But let's talk specifically about life cycles. women go through significant life transitions. How can you proactively manage your health during these phases, especially considering hormonal changes?
I think that the biggest thing to remember is that you have to eat. Like a lot of people sort of go into this restriction mode, um,
Hmm.
or forgetful mode of not eating. And I'm like, if you do that, your body holds on to fat and you're not going to lose weight. If your goal is to transition from, pregnancy weight into postpartum and kind of looking and feeling your old self, not eating is the worst way to try to get to that point.
Hmm.
So it's understanding that you need the fuel to let your body function, or else it's going to hold on to what it knows best because it's not going to be able to survive.
Hmm.
So kind of giving that little, sort of intro education, but predominantly, if it's sort of like the transition between the pregnancy and the reason we're even addressing this pregnancy to perimenopause is because many women are having their children later, or
Hmm.
they have multiple children, and they're maybe their third or fourth kid is when they're in their late 30s and early 40s, and that can sometimes trigger the perimenopause because it's like the body's just shifted. It's aging. It's just the
Hmm.
natural age process. So it's shifted into that next cycle. And the biggest thing to remember is healthy fats. Like I really love encouraging people to, like, if they don't have an allergy, like nuts and seeds, like a spoonful of, like a nut butter that you love, almond butter, peanut butter, and whatever mixed seeded nut butter. Like I said, cheese sticks, whole milk Greek yogurt, whole milk probiotic yogurt, the Skyr yogurts, um, any kind of like sort of dense, like if you're eating, whether you're having like a seeded bread or, adding like the extra hemp seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds to things, all really great sources of fuel and nutrition for the body. And kind of breaking it down, and also going back to the roots with like eggs and, whole milk if you don't have a dairy issue. Just reminding people that some of the basics are extremely nutritious, and kind of giving them a guide like 8 ounces. This
Right.
is serving size. You can do it, no problem. And so kind of addressing some of those old school things that we used to do that actually work. I really encourage them to avoid, like, don't do anything low fat. Don't do anything like, don't restrict eat. Obviously, try to eat less processed foods for the sodium and the salt because that can cause um, bloating, weight retention. You might feel less energetic this way. So the goal for me in these types of sort of phase and transition, as we're talking now, is maintaining your energy levels, maintaining your caloric intake so that you're not holding on to fat, and being able to function and sort of
Hmm.
have that momentum of how you eat affects how you sleep, and how you sleep affects how you are the next day, and keeping that momentum going.
And how about for like exercise? What do you think? Is there like a switch in the exercise that you should be really focusing on?
I really try to get people to either focus on, something like a power walk. Like if you can't get outside and you have access to a treadmill, great. If you're working from home and you have access to one of those like walking,
Hmm.
like pads, however it fits into your schedule. But like 20 minutes of walking is a huge positive impact on your health. 20 minutes. I
Yeah.
mean, that's it. So, I try to do that. And I also emphasize core, because the core is what is the weakest for most of us, and it's because our lives have become more sedentary as we age. We just sit more.
Right.
We're not, hunting and gathering. We're not in that world anymore, right? So when we're sitting more, like everything is inactive. And so that's when back pain starts. That's when sciatic pain starts. That's when knee pain kicks in. Neck pain from like sitting and, typing away or like on your phone. So getting that core focus exercises are big for even for transitions after pregnancy, because you've gone through that change. So
Right.
I'm really big on like Pilates based strength training,
Hmm.
resistance band Pilates based strength training, even deep yoga stretching, like holding each pose and like powering, like a power yoga. Like
Right.
those are extremely powerful
Yeah.
in a positive way.
So besides pregnancy and perimenopause, what are some other life cycles that maybe women especially are going through that they would have to adjust their nutrition and health?
I think before pregnancy, it starts with fertility. And I
Hmm.
always tell people that, I don't want you to stress out about what you have to give up to try to get pregnant. There's no
Right.
exact science to any of it. There's no exact if this then that. It's more of like understanding that you have to do everything in moderation. So you want to go out and socialize with your friend who just turned 32, but you're trying for a child, go and have a glass of champagne and celebrate her birthday. And like I said, have it at 5:30, have it at 6 so that, you feel better about the choices that you're making. You want to have you want to have a bagel and, bacon, egg, and cheese in the morning. Have it, scoop out half your bagel, have half of the sandwich for, breakfast, have the other half for lunch. Like you can still bacon is has nitrites, it is cooked, it is not a great fat, but it's once in a while. Like these are things that like I feel like everyone's like, well, I can't eat this and I've stopped eating this, and I'm taking kind of just keeping them like a little bit more of a reality check. From
Right.
fertility goes into pregnancy, and pregnancy, there's no exact science because no pregnant woman, very few pregnant women would have gone into a trial that would say, try
Right.
this and see what happens. So it's more of just, managing everything it's really about managing symptoms. So
Hmm.
you start off the first trimester. If you're feeling these symptoms, it is managing those symptoms. I always tell people don't stress and think about weight gain. I gained 47 pounds in both my pregnancies. The first pregnancy, I was happy. I ate peanut butter. I loved like walks. I was vibing,
Hmm.
and it was a good flow. The second pregnancy, I had my toddler. I was sick for the first 20 weeks. I
Mm.
couldn't touch peanut butter. Salads and smoothies made me throw up.
Ugh.
Um, but I gained the same amount of weight. And I
Right.
gained a lot of weight at the end of the pregnancy, but I wasn't even eating. It's your body's gonna do what it does. So like
Hmm.
pregnancy, I always say it's about managing symptoms and also being cognizant of your genetic history. So if you're just susceptible to like if you're having a pregnancy a little bit later in life and you're susceptible to pre-diabetes and it runs in your family, or you've got something that's looming, then you got to be more cognizant of it because gestational diabetes is an issue. High blood pressure in pregnancy is an issue. So these are things we want to make sure of. Like, let's watch our sodium and processed food
Hmm.
intake. Like some of the smarter, food concepts are still, pertinent in pregnancy. And
Right.
then you get into postpartum, and for me, it's all about energy, keeping
Yeah.
your energy up. If you're trying to nurse, don't skimp on those calories if you're producing milk, and don't expect weight loss if you're producing milk because it's a high number. Like I would say close to 60 to 70% of women don't lose weight until they officially stop nursing.
The
There's no,
biggest myth,
oh,
the
sorry,
biggest myth that's out there. It's like,
biggest
oh,
myth.
if you breastfeed, you're gonna lose all this weight. I never had like major cravings during pregnancy. I ate so many carbs postpartum when I was breastfeeding. It was insane. Like, and I was like, what? Just like so hungry all the time. And I feel like I was more unhealthy in those like, that time than I was during any other point of my life, really.
That's the norm
Yeah.
actually. So, that being said, my goal is always like stay near, like I always kind of have to remind people like, and I'm also like, it's a phase. Like that's why
Hmm.
we talk about these as cycles and phases because nothing is forever.
Right.
So it's going to end. And when it ends, you can start that journey and commit yourself to
Hmm.
energy and keeping that energy up because now you have one, two, three kids, and you got to manage motherhood and parenting and all of that. And so
Hmm.
that's where the wellness hacks come in, the family hacks come in, the mindful eating strategies, the intuitive eating strategies. And then we go into from motherhood into, perimenopause and menopause, and we sort of start making sure that we're eating enough calcium, we're eating enough iron, and we're integrating strength training, keeping our bone densities up, and sort of making sure that those and working on anti-inflammatory and just sort of like working through those emotional and physiological sort of changes that happen.
Hmm. Yeah, that's such great advice for all levels. And I think especially as women, we have to just be so
Patient.
cognizant and yeah, and patient. And it is because I'm just I would say like officially out of postpartum because having two kids, two under two, and it was just like a lot. And my youngest is 18 months. And I feel like, probably for the last like 5 to 9 months, I guess I felt pretty normal. But it's it's very hard when you're in the postpartum and then you're still comparing yourself to other people. Well, that person just had a baby and they look like this, and that person just, and maybe that person has postpartum depression and they're not
Yes.
eating and that's why they're
Yes.
so skinny, or
Yes.
they're not taking care of themselves. And I'm not saying that's with everybody, but like the bounce back after pregnancy is so stressful. And it's just like you just have to be patient and wait until it's done, and then you can start working on yourself.
And, age does play a role. If you've had a child a little bit later in life, it's your age and it's not saying that you can't do that. There's no shaming on anything, but
Right.
naturally your body isn't going to rebound or
Right.
change
Mm-hmm.
as quickly. So some things have to be, some of your behavioral strategies have to be a little bit more strict, so to speak. Like maybe you
Right.
have to eat dinner by 6:30, 3 nights or 4 nights a week, and really make sure you get that protein in so that
Mm-hmm.
you're burning, so you're being very cognizant of the caloric intake and the macro intake. But at the same time, it's an 80-20 rule. You go back to 80% of the time you stay on track, and 20% of the time you live a little, whatever that
Right.
means for you, so that there's a balance.
I love the 80-20 with like everything in life. It's so, our
Yeah,
kids sleep, with our nutrition, with our exercise. I'm like, if we're doing it 80% of the time, I'm not going to stress the other 20%, because
exactly.
like it's life. You can't be perfect. Pregnancy too. All right. So you gave us so much information. We learned, from childhood to menopause, basically how we need to give ourselves the proper nutrition. So what's your best piece of advice that you could leave the listeners with in regards to keeping healthy habits?
Oh boy. I mean, I feel like there's lots of habits, but I will say that probably if there's something that you want and you want it really bad and the thought keeps coming back, have it.
Hmm.
Don't push it away, because at the end of the day, what you do in that moment isn't going to have, I mean, I'm assuming this is, you're gravitating towards, like, I don't know, cheese, a
Hmm.
glass of wine, something delicious like a port or chocolate something. I mean, I don't know what it is. Or it could just be a pizza slice, whatever. It's not going to be that impactful where it's going to deter your momentum that you've been
Hmm.
working towards. And it's you got to think about, isolate the moments and
Hmm.
manage that satiety factor, because the more happy you are and that feeling that you feel, it's going to keep you on track, and you've given yourself that urge, you feel satisfied, you're going to be
Hmm.
more committed to keeping that, the health in check. So
Yeah.
I would say that would probably be my biggest advice.
Yeah, I think that's
Intuitive,
such
be
great
intuitive
advice.
with
Yeah,
everything.
intuitive eating is super important. Well, that's a perfect way to end it. So that's going to bring us to the end of another episode of the Running Wine Mom podcast. Thank you so much, Anita, for sharing everything, nutrition, fitness, and wellness. You were so informative. Thank you so much
I am
for
so thankful for being able to connect with you and being a resource to your listeners. It's been awesome.
Yes, it was amazing. So, as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it. You can also follow me on Instagram at the running wine mom underscore. And Anita, where can the listeners find you?
My Instagram is at FitNut Fitness Nutrition, so FitNut Anita. And my website is my first name, last name.com. You can always just drop a message.
Yeah, and I'll link all of that for everyone to see as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, and keep embracing the joy of motherhood. Cheers, and I will be back next Tuesday.